Three experienced sailors set out from Queensland in April 2007 for what should have been a straightforward coastal voyage. Within days, their catamaran was found drifting near the Great Barrier Reef with the engines still running. The men had simply disappeared, no distress call, no signs of struggle. Nothing. What happened to them is still a mystery to this day. But let's dive into the clues found in the days after their disappearance, to see what they tell us about what most likely happened to them. Welcome to Shipwreck History. This is the second part of our October Ghost Ship series. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and help support our channel. Don't forget to check out part 1 about the ghost ship of the Arctic. The Kaz II was a 30-foot catamaran, the kind of vessel you see in marinas along Australia's coast. Nothing particularly special about her, which made what happened all the more unsettling. She belonged to Derek Batten, a 56-year-old from Perth who'd bought her the year before. Batten had taken sailing courses and made a couple of shorter trips around the Whitsunday Islands. He knew enough to be confident, but the upcoming voyage was beyond anything he'd done before. He brought along his neighbors, brothers Peter and James Tunstead, 69 and 63. The Tunsteads had been sailing together since they were teenagers, and had even volunteered in radio rooms. They knew their way around boats, though mostly smaller ones. They planned a long coastal voyage, eventually circling northern Australia and returning to Perth. On April 15, 2007, they departed from Airlie Beach's Able Point Marina. The first leg was straightforward, north to Townsville, about 170 kilometers up the coast. The Great Barrier Reef stretched out to the east, and the weather, while a bit choppy, was not anything alarming. Nothing complicated about it, just a couple days up the coast to get a feel for the boat. The next day, April 16th, a commercial fisherman named Gavin Howland was working a reef off Bowen when he spotted something odd. A white yacht, with a torn sail, drifting between the reefs. He came within 50 meters but couldn't see anyone aboard. The boat was moving through a narrow passage at about 3 knots, pushed by the current. Howland thought it was strange seeing a sailboat in an area known for shallow water, but he had a policy about not approaching other vessels. He didn't report it. That sighting would later become crucial to understanding the timeline. 2 days later, a helicopter spotted the same yacht drifting further north near the Great Barrier Reef. Something was off here. When maritime authorities finally caught up with the vessel on April 20th, they prepared for the worst. What they found was somehow more disturbing than bodies. Step aboard the Kaz on that April afternoon, and you'd think the crew had just stepped away for a moment. The diesel engine was running, sitting in neutral, just burning fuel while the boat drifted wherever the current took it. The cabin lights were on. All the navigation systems, the GPS, the radio, everything was functional and still powered up. A laptop sat open and running. The table had food and utensils laid out. All of the life jackets were still neatly stowed. The fenders were deployed along the side of the hull, though investigators would later determine through video evidence and witness accounts that they'd left port that way. Small craft often do. But here's what made investigators pause. One of the sails was badly shredded. Not just worn or weathered, but torn up in a way that suggested either violent weather or a struggle with the rigging itself. And there was video footage, recorded by James Tunstead on the morning they disappeared. The footage showed the boat with a long rope trailing behind it, the coastline visible in the background, the sea conditions moderate but choppy. Later, investigators would use landmarks in that video to pinpoint almost exactly when and where things started to go wrong. James's shirt and glasses were found on the deck, placed on the back seat. He'd taken them off at some point that morning. No one knows why. Forensic teams spent hours going through the vessel. Sergeant Paul Malloy, one of 3 forensic officers who examined the Kaz after she was towed back to shore, looked for any sign of foul play, signs of a struggle, evidence that someone else had been aboard. He found nothing. No fingerprints that shouldn't be there. No indication whatsoever that this was anything other than the 3-man crew going about their voyage. Under the galley bench, fishing knife sheaths sat unused. Under Batten's bed, a sealed container held a firearm and ammunition, all accounted for. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for the men themselves. The Kaz was perfectly seaworthy. It should have been impossible for 3 men to vanish from her deck. The search for the three men was massive and included helicopters, planes, and boats from multiple volunteer rescue units. They analyzed data from the Kaz's GPS system to narrow down where the crew might have gone overboard. A survival time expert concluded that if they'd been in the water since April 15th or 16th, they were almost certainly dead. The waters were choppy, none of them were particularly strong swimmers, and the window for survival was narrow. The search was called off on April 21st, though another attempt was made a few days later after new information came in. Again, nothing was found. In August 2008, State Coroner Michael Barnes held an inquest in Townsville. 27 witnesses testified. Some had seen the ship during its voyage. Others helped piece together what the crew had been doing in those final hours. Derek's wife, Jennifer, testified that her husband had been well prepared, that they'd originally planned to make the voyage as a couple, but Derek had worried that only two people might not be safe, so he'd asked the Tunsteads to come along. The coroner had to work with incomplete information. He openly admitted in his official report that he couldn't be definitive about exactly how the deaths occurred. But based on the physical evidence, the eyewitness accounts, and that video footage, he proposed the most likely scenario. Sometime on the morning of April 15th, around 10:05 a.m., the Kaz was sailing near George Point. Everything was fine. Within the next hour, things changed dramatically. The men had hauled in a white rope that had been trailing behind the boat and bundled it up on the foredeck, possibly to dry. James took off his shirt and glasses. And then came the problem. A fishing lure had become entangled around the port rudder. This is where the coroner's scenario begins. One of the Tunstead brothers most likely went to free it. The Kaz had what's called a sugar scoop platform at the stern, a low platform close to the waterline which made falling in easy and getting back aboard nearly impossible. The coroner believes that this is when the first brother went overboard. The second brother, seeing what happened, attempted to rescue, and he went over too. Now, Derek Batten was alone on a moving boat with two men in the water behind him. He needed to turn around. To do that, he had to adjust the sails, and this is where that shredded sail comes in. A wind shift, sudden and strong, caused the boom to swing across the deck in an accidental jibe. The boom caught Batten and knocked him overboard. All three men were now in the water. The boat, with no one at the helm, just kept drifting. Once you're in the water and your boat is moving away, your chances drop fast. None of them were strong swimmers. The seas were choppy enough to make staying afloat difficult. The yacht would have been out of reach within minutes. The coroner effectively ruled out foul play. This was a cascade of bad luck, poor timing, and the ocean doing what the ocean does. Not everyone bought the coroner's explanation. The family spent tens of thousands of dollars, hiring planes and boats to keep searching long after the official effort ended, convinced there had to be another answer. The fenders became a focal point for speculation. They were deployed along the hull when the boat was found, which some family members saw as evidence another vessel had come along. Maritime experts will tell you that fenders typically mean docking or meeting another boat, which opened the door to darker possibilities: pirates, drug smugglers, something more sinister than an accident. But the police found no evidence of anyone else being aboard, and more to the point, the video footage from that morning showed the fenders were already out when they left the marina. Plenty of small boats just leave them deployed, nothing unusual about it. Other ideas surfaced over time. Maybe they grounded on a reef and all got off to push free, only to watch the boat catch wind and sail away without them. Freak weather events, rogue waves, environmental anomalies. The kind of explanations people reach for when the simple answer feels insufficient. But the conditions that day weren't catastrophic. The waves were a little rough, but nothing that would sweep three men off the deck all at once unless something specific went wrong. The most likely explanation remains the one the coroner proposed: a fishing lure, a rescue attempt, a shifting wind, and three men in the water with no way back aboard. The haunting part is how routine everything seemed right up until the moment it turned catastrophic. A simple task, a split-second decision, and suddenly three men were gone. Their bodies were never recovered. The families never got closure, and that's why the Kaz still haunts us. What's your take? Does the coroner's scenario make sense to you? Or do you lean toward one of the other theories? And maybe the bigger question, Why do modern ghost ships still unsettle us when we can track nearly everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share, and let us know in the comments what shipwrecks you want us to cover next. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And until next time, keep exploring.